Fly chick coming through. Nice to meet you. Glad you came too. Like your style when you know you got moves. You spit game and you know you spit.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fastlane Collective. I am your host, Brianna, and I am joined by my wonderful co-host, as always, Daniela. Yasmin, unfortunately, is not here this weekend, so we just wanted to say we miss you, we love you, and we can't wait to have her back on, hopefully, the next show. But Daniela, how are you doing? How are things going over there in lovely London town?
Things are going well because the sun is out and it is very warm, which doesn't happen in London very often, so I'm taking it. I'm very happy that the weather is glorious right now. Yeah, it's going well. And when the weather's nice, I'm happy.
Hey, we love good weather. I agree with you on that. The weather has been nice here, and I will say when the sun is shining, it makes it just a little bit better living on the water. So it makes it nice. Although my peace and quiet has kind of been ruined because construction has been going on right outside my front door. They're ripping up the road. So the other day I was sitting outside trying to enjoy my morning coffee on the deck, and then all I could hear was ta, 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 ta. I was like, oh my God, can I just enjoy the sun without a jackhammer noise and the beeping of construction vehicles? But yeah, so I apologize. The construction's still going on. So if you hear jackhammering, random beeping, have no fear. It's just the Boston, Massachusetts road people outside. But yes, it's been nice here as well, which is nice. And summer, I feel like it's almost here. Like it's warm, but not too warm, which is what I love, honestly. So I'm happy to hear, though, that it's nice and sunny in London. You said it's warm, though, and you're wearing a sweater. Are you still cold?
I'm a nice temperature right now.
Got it.
As this progresses, I might end up taking it off because I had to close the window and turn the fan off. And so now I feel like I might get too hot.
Yeah.
But we will cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah. Look at the sacrifices we make for you, podcast. We turn off our fans, our air conditioning, and close all of our windows so that it doesn't disturb the precious podcast. But listen, we'll get right into this week's news. Not a ton going on, but some things we definitely wanted to mention. This week, Yuki Tsunoda celebrated 100 Grand Prix for himself. I don't think it went as he planned it would go to celebrate the 100th Grand Prix. We put on our Instagram stories as well. That hasn't been a great week for Yuki, obviously, with some issues in qualifying and then finishing the race in, spoiler alert, P12. Nothing spectacular. Daniela, can you believe, though, that Yuki Tsunoda has been in F1 to complete 100 Grand Prix?
No. When you told me earlier, I was like, really 100 already? It feels like he hasn't been in F1 for that long. But then when I think back to it, actually it has been quite a few seasons now, but it doesn't feel like it. It's gone really quickly. Do you agree with me, Brianna?
Yeah, I feel the same as well. I feel like Yuki just got here. He seems like still new and fresh to the paddock, and maybe that's because he's with Red Bull this season, so it feels new and fresh. But yeah, pretty crazy that he's completed 100 Grand Prix. Honestly, if you asked me if he would be around this long, I probably would have said no. But yeah, I mean, congrats. That's a great milestone. I think he wishes that he could have celebrated in a better way than how this weekend went. But still happy to have Yuki Tsunoda around for his 100th Grand Prix, and hopefully he'll get a podium win in there somewhere in the GPs to come. So yeah, Yuki celebrating 100 happy Grand Prix. Lance Stroll, surprisingly, the miracle boy of Canada, made a triumphant return from his surgery on his wrist. Just after 1 week from his surgery. I was surprised he was coming back. I did not expect him back at his home race just because any surgery obviously is probably going to need at least a week of of healing and recovery before you jump back into something as strenuous as driving an F1 car. Daniela, were you also surprised that Lance was coming back for his home Grand Prix?
Yes and no. I feel like he kind of pushed himself to get back for his home Grand Prix, but also at the same time, I thought he was going to need longer to recover. Which is why I feel like Aston Martin was starting to look into other alternatives. Felipe Drugovich said that if needed, he would rearrange his plans. I think he was racing in 24 Hours of Le Mans, and he said that if needed, he would drop out and come to the Canadian Grand Prix, but obviously he was not needed. Lance came back and was like, you know what, guys, I'm fine. I'm going to race my home Grand Prix, which seemed a bit odd to me. Do you agree, Brianna?
Yeah. Yeah, I have so much to say on this matter. So I was actually, like you, surprised that it was announced that he was coming back. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So much, I didn't think he was going to be back so much, so I left him out of my "Who are you cheering for?" TikTok post, because I was like, there's no way he's coming for this Grand Prix. So I was very shocked, and for that very reason, I was like, wow, I really like, this is works out great for Aston Martin. What a comeback story. Again, Lance Stroll is like coming back from an injury, from a surgery, and coming through for Aston Martin. And not only that, his home race, like this is going to be a big thing for them to kind of, raise the banner on. And they practically said nothing about it. And it was even stranger that obviously Lance was in one of the groups for Thursday's press conference interviews. It's obviously his home race. So when he was asked about it, they were just like, oh, how are you doing? How's the wrist? And he was like, oh, doing well. The wrist is good. And that is basically all he said. When pushed to answer some more questions, he didn't really want to answer. Even more suspiciously, he only had like a very small amount of wrapping around his wrist right here, like maybe no wider than an Apple Watch. And then in the press conference, he was hiding his arm inside his pocket, his hand and his wrist, inside his pocket the entire time. It's just weird. From a marketing standpoint, looking at this is like the perfect PR gold for Aston Martin. And especially for somebody like Lance Stroll that's not honestly reflected very well in the media and is not that loved by fans. You would think that this is the perfect moment for them to be like, look at him, he's so dedicated, like he's coming back in time for his home Grand Prix, and so he doesn't miss anything. It's just weird. And Daniela, I don't know if you feel the same way because of what the rumors we heard last week that were reported by the BBC, which is a pretty reliable source. They don't often, sling around kind of like rumors that have no merit to them. About Lance, the reason Lance needed surgery was not because of prior pain in his wrist throughout the past weeks of driving. It was because he threw a fit in the garage and hit something and damaged his wrist. Do you think that Lance Stroll's kind of like the way things played out this week with his return, do you think that confirms for you that in fact the reason for the surgery was due to him throwing a fit in the garage?
It definitely makes me think that him throwing a fit in the garage is more of a likely reasoning as to why he came back so quickly and maybe it didn't cause as much damage to his wrist as they kind of made out that he had. But also the fact that, Aston Martin could have turned this into a really nice comeback story. You thought we would see it more posts on their socials. It was very under wraps. As you said, Lance kind of avoided all questions when asked about it in the media press conference. So, I think that the BBC are probably onto something here. I trust the BBC. They're quite reliable. But I haven't really heard many of the people talk about this, which then also kind of is like, why is no one talking about it? What does some people know that maybe others don't? So I think it's very interesting narrative that's kind of now being created, because I think Aston Martin were trying to avoid it, but now questions are being posed as to how has he come back so quickly? And why do you not want to talk about it?
Yeah. And it's also strange to me the fact that, like, I agree. Sorry, let me compose my thoughts. As you can tell, like, my thoughts are just running wild with this because you're right. There is no like true hard facts to this possible scenario of Lance like going crazy in the garage and that's how his wrist got tweaked or damaged. But part of me even wonders, did he have surgery? Like, I know that's insane to think, but like, did he really have surgery? Was there an incident in the garage that they're trying to cover up and his hand maybe was hurt, but not his wrist? I did see that he was being asked like, oh, which wrist was it? And he kind of snapped back and was like, that's my personal medical information. Like, I don't want to share that. Like, why would you not want to answer such a simple question? And it wasn't like they were saying, like, what procedure did you have? It was just like, what wrist was it, dude? Like, he was wearing a bandage. So it is just very strange how downplayed it is. And if I'm Aston Martin and the reason that Lance wasn't able to race in Spain is not really the reason, I'm going to do everything I can to avert any attention to it.
But would they have... to me, it's just wild because why would they not let him race? Like, surely potential points and letting your driver race is more important. Or like, not necessarily more important, but like you would have thought a team would do everything in their power for their driver to race. Why would you not let him if he wasn't hurt? Like, if he's done something to the team and this is a serious matter, why is someone like the FIA not involved? Like, why? I just feel like if anyone was to say, no, you cannot race if you've done something to a member of your team or damaged something in some way, I feel like the FIA would have stepped in. But they weren't a part of this decision at all. Like, it was Lance has hurt his wrist. That's the end of the story. So in my mind, I have to think that's true, because why else wouldn't he have raced? Like, would they have stopped him from racing as a punishment, which then feels like we're at school and like he is a student being told you have detention because you have done XYZ. So you're not allowed to play football because you've done XYZ. Like, does that make sense? Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yes, yeah. I think for me it makes it even more suspicious because they claimed that Lance had been having pain in his wrist for about 6 weeks. And the timing of when they pulled him out in Spain, which basically took that one car out of the race entirely and any possibility for points. It was like, okay, if you knew Lance was having these pains for 6 weeks and you had to know, like, going into possibly that weekend that he was at like some sort of pain threshold, and you only decide to like make this decision after he's participated in qualifying, which means you cannot put another driver in that seat for the race, and now you've lost out points completely. But then they like rush him back as fast as they can so he's back for the Canadian Grand Prix. It's like, what's going on here? Like, if you were a smart team and you knew your driver was injured, hey, let's not have you participate in qualifying. Let's have somebody else in the car so we at least have a chance at making some points. And then you get your surgery and then you come back for Canada. But instead it was like, no, let's sacrifice the points in Spain and then we'll rush you back to come to Canada. It just... things are not making sense. And the fact that the team is so quiet and the fact that they didn't like make a big deal about this like triumphant return of the Canadian at his home race, like he's so dedicated that he's coming back this soon, it makes it even weirder. And I hear what you're saying. Like, my whole thing is, well, I don't think the I don't think many people know actually what happened. And that's the whole reason we're not making a big stink about Lance coming back, because we don't want to draw any more attention to the fact that he was even gone in the first place. Things aren't making sense. They're not lining up. And it is weird that we haven't heard anybody else report on it. But Lance Stroll this whole weekend, even after the race, like this kid, and there were rumors while he was out that they were gearing up to replace him. I don't know if you saw those, Daniela, but there are a lot of rumors flying around about that. Do you think there's any merit to that?
It's hard to say when your dad owns the team. So I feel like no, just because if he was going to have been replaced, I feel like it would have happened 3 seasons ago, if not longer. So yeah, I think it's a bit bizarre that these rumors are now flying about when I'm like, he's been proven for a long time now that he cannot put the performance in that he needs to make the team literally go anywhere. So why now are they looking at potentially replacing him?
Yeah.
I don't know, this whole drama, or not even drama, because at the moment no one even speaking about it, but this whole situation just feels very off to me. And do you know the person that I'm wondering about is what Adrian Newey thinks about this. He's just joined Aston Martin, and is he thinking, oh my god, what have I signed myself up for?
No, he's hiding away in his little cot room somewhere in the basement of Aston Martin's new facility. That man ain't coming out for nothing. Yeah, it's just, it all is a bit off. And part of me is like, when there's smoke, there's fire. And it just feels strange to me at all. But anyways, I'm not the biggest fan of Lance Stroll. I don't think many people are. But also just seeing the way he acted in press conferences this whole weekend and just how he acts in general, like, it's just literally giving he doesn't care. Like, that he doesn't really want to be here. He's just here. He doesn't really care. He doesn't want to win. And I know Esteban Ocon is saying, no, like, you forget he had a podium. It's like, yeah, but like, that was forever ago. I don't know, like, how many people have stayed in F1 with his poor performance. It's crazy. And I can't believe, like, Lawrence Stroll's willing to sacrifice his team, basically, for a championship with his son. That isn't going to happen. So
it's strange because, like, 2 to 3 years ago, Lawrence Stroll said that in 5 years, Aston Martin were going to be a winning, like, championship winning team. And we all sat there and said, not with your son in that seat. And I still would say that stands.
I agree. I agree. So, anyways, Lance Stroll, did he get the surgery? Did he not? Why was he back? This is weird. No one's talking about it. We just wanted to bring it up here. We wanted to talk about it because no one else is, and it just feels really weird. Really weird. Okay, last but not least, you mentioned it a little bit ago, but Le Mans 24-hour was this week. I watched a little bit of it when I could. Daniela, I don't know if you got to watch a little bit of it at all.
Unfortunately not, because the broadcast here, like, I think they wanted, like, almost £20 just to be able to watch it. And I was like, I don't know if I want to just spend that money on something that's only going to last me 24 hours. So I didn't do it.
Hey, that's a pretty good deal. It's less than $1 an hour, so
That's true. That is true.
Not bad. Not a bad deal. But yeah, the 24-hour Le Mans was happening this weekend. You're probably wondering, Brianna, why are we bringing this up on a completely F1 podcast? And we promise you it's related because Ferrari have won for the 3rd year in a row. At least Ferrari's got something good going for them on a different racetrack. But a reason we wanted to bring this up too, if you're a new fan, you might not know. If you're a lifelong fan, you will know this. But the man to bring it over the finish line for Ferrari was Robert Kubica, who was a former Formula One driver, and he joins the likes of Fernando Alonso as one of 2 F1 race winners to win at Le Mans. This is really cool, and honestly, knowing his story and just seeing his kind of, career in F1 and his comeback there, Seeing him win Le Mans made me smile and made me really happy for him because he has come so far. As an F1 fan, Daniela, is it always cool to kind of see this like crossover between motorsports when we see another F1 driver kind of winning in a different motorsport category?
Yes, I love it when we have crossovers like this. And I think it was extra special for Robert Kubica. If you don't know, back in 2011, he had a really awful accident during a rally championship. And it meant that kind of we saw a bit of a downfall of his career. Like, he lost his big chances within F1 and like what he... and everyone was expecting him to do because his recovery was really challenging and really difficult. I think he broke his leg, his arm, and there was a third place of his body, but I can't remember what it is. And then after that all started to kind of heal, he then re-broke his arm, and he just had like a really, really rough time and never got to kind of live out his F1 dreams to the extent that they could have been. So everyone's kind of very happy that he went to go on and win Le Mans this past weekend. I think it's very special that he did it with Ferrari as well, a team that he wanted to win with in F1. So it's a very special moment for him and a lovely way to kind of round out his racing career up to this point.
Yeah, it was. It was so cool to see. And like, we all love a comeback story. Who doesn't love a comeback story? And winning Le Mans is a pretty good way to kind of like round out your comeback story, I have to say.
Aston Martin don't love a comeback story.
Just bring that up, Danielle. I was also watching as well because the Iron Dames were participating in Le Mans 24-hour. And if you're a female F1 fan and don't know who the Iron Dames are, go check them out. They're an amazing all-female racing team. Dorian Pin races with them. Marta Garcia has raced with them. So those will be familiar names to you. But yeah, and they have a partner team, the Iron Lynx, which is an all-male team. And they were ahead of them like the majority of Le Mans, if not all of Le Mans. So I was just like, you know, like girls can do better. Not that I wanted the boys to lose at all, but it's just kind of nice to be like, you know, you hear all those people say like, oh, girls can't drive as fast as guys can. And when you're on like equal playing fields and same teams, technically, to see the women outperform. They were at one point when I looked fourth at one point. I don't think they finished that high, unfortunately. I think there was an incident that they got involved in that kind of their third stint. But it was just so good to see the women out there and finishing and being at the top at some point in the race. So that was really exciting to see. If you've never watched 24 Hours of Le Mans, really comes around every year. And it's kind of a cool thing to see, at least for a couple hours, maybe not all 24 hours. I couldn't do it. I couldn't stay up and watch. I would for sure fall asleep. I don't know about you, but like I listen to like rain sounds to fall asleep, but cars driving around a track also put me to sleep, ironically. I don't know if I'm really tired and have to wake up very early to watch an F1 race and the race is boring, I will fall right asleep because the sound of cars just going around a track is like music to my ears. I just boop, pass right out, you know? So, all right, let's get into the race. Speaking of something that puts you to sleep, this race was pretty uneventful up until the end. And actually more eventful, I would argue, after the race was over. Daniela, how did you feel about the race's entertainment value, but also how do you feel about this track in Montreal? Do you think it produces good racing, or do you think this is one that you could maybe see yourself not caring if it dropped off the calendar?
Well, I found this race pretty boring. Brian, I kind of have to agree with you about the falling asleep factor here, because I was watching the Grand Prix and was just waiting for it to end so that I could go to sleep. I had had enough. I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm bored. I want my bed. I'm not going to lie. As soon as they crossed the line, I fell asleep before I even watched the podium. I was asleep. I was done. So Brianna did have to fill me in with everything that happened post-race because I missed it all. But In terms of calendar as a track, I feel like it's a mixed bag. Sometimes I love it. Sometimes I'm just a bit like, could have had a bit more drama there. But one of my favourite races of all time is and you've probably heard it because many people do talk about it, but is the 2011 Canadian Grand Prix. That gave everything. You had rain, you had drama, you had crashes, you had people doing massive overtakes and not knowing who was going to win right at the end. It was brilliant. But we haven't quite had a Canadian Grand Prix like it since. So maybe within recent years, probably the last 3 years, I've not really thought that much of it. So maybe I wouldn't be too fussed if they did take it off the calendar. Brianna, you're someone who has been to the Canadian Grand Prix. I want to know your thoughts.
Yeah, listen, I think it has its unique qualities. I mean, that hairpin turn at the end is something so cool to see in real life, especially the cars not even in the turn, but approaching it and coming out of it. It is one of the coolest things to see as a motorsports enthusiast, because it's quite mind-blowing. But I will say, every year I've gone to the Canadian Grand Prix, which would only be 2. I have had every type of weather you could possibly conjure up in 3 days. I remember the first day we went. First day, beautiful, sunny, perfect temperature, not too hot, not too cold. Second day, absolutely freezing, downpouring, practically hailing, miserable. And then the day of the Grand Prix, it was so hot, I thought I was going to melt into the grandstand. Like, it is quite crazy how that area seems to have some crazy weather, which can produce some really interesting race results and even qualifying results as well. But I do have to say the past couple of years, it hasn't been as exciting as I had hoped. We do know that it is difficult to overtake on this track. It is definitely not the easiest track on the calendar, and it's definitely technically difficult with its like a lot of slow corners. But according to Danica Patrick, this track isn't that hard at all, and your car just needs to be balanced. So listen up, guys. Just balance your car, and the track won't be that hard. Ugh. We're not even gonna open that can of worms. But yeah, it hasn't produced some like the exciting racing that I think we'd hope. We saw obviously this weekend a couple of DRS trains. Ollie Behrman said he just was stuck in a DRS train and basically because of that couldn't do any overtaking. So I think it does have its problems. I don't think I'd hate to see it go, to be honest with you. I think we could replace it with something new or an older track that could produce more exciting racing, but it is Canada. It is the only race in Canada. Montreal's a beautiful city. Nothing against Montreal, and I love like the site of where that track is. It's like a little F1 island. It is an F1 island, which is cool.
Next year, the Indy 500 clashes with the Canadian Grand Prix. And rightfully so, many people are very angry about this. And I also was too, because I do love a bit of IndyCar and I love F1. After this weekend, I have very much decided which one I'm going to prioritise next year, and I'll leave that all to your imagination.
Yeah, if you compare the Indy 500 this year and the Canadian Grand Prix this year, it's really easy to choose who you might be watching between. But I know, yeah, a lot of American fans are quite upset about it because it is a race that you can get to quite easily. I mean, yes, we have 3 races now in the United States, but all of those races either happen in the south of the US or the west. So if you live like East Coast, like upper northern East Coast, middle of the US, like it's like, okay, pick your poison where you're traveling to. But in Canada, like a lot of, like I've driven the past 2 times I've gone. It is like a bit of a drive, but it's not that bad. And it's quite inexpensive to go to the Canadian Grand Prix compared to other Grand Prix as well. So yeah, I know a lot of motorsports fans are upset American-wise because they're like, dang, now I have to choose between a race I could go to that I can afford for F1 or going to the Indy 500. So Yeah, interesting move there by F1 on the change. But let's talk about obviously the big talk in the town for the weekend, McLaren. I mean, this was a little difficult to watch, and as I was watching it, to be honest with you, the last couple laps, I thought, are we witnessing one of the first inter-team rivalries like come back to life? We have seen rivalries obviously from driver to driver on different teams, but it's been a while that we have seen two drivers in the same team this close and fighting this closely with each other, and watching Lando and Oscar kind of battle it out at the end there. That is something that popped in my head. Daniela, I don't know if that's a thought that you've been like, oh my God, are we witnessing like one of the great team rivalries like just beginning to be birthed?
I think there was a lot of comparison between Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton at this, like, when we compare like the McLaren teammates, but also Jenson Button and Lewis Hamilton. And with it also being Canada, there was a lot of comparisons because Jenson Button and Lewis Hamilton did have an incident, and I think it was also in the 2011 Canadian Grand Prix. So that was being talked about a lot this weekend, and I think people are right to kind of make these comparisons. I thought that there was going to be some drama at the end of the race. I said at the start of the race that I felt like this might be quite boring, but I think in the last 3 to 5 laps, something's going to happen. And then it got to 5 laps left, and I was like, right, pay attention because you might be right here. It got to 3 laps, and then it happened, and I was like, I knew it! I knew something was going to happen. I just didn't know what. And so I think the fact that it happened between two teammates made it even more spicy. It's just a shame that Lando kind of left with no points, because if he hadn't have gone for a gap that didn't exist, then he would have taken home some more points to kind of try and close in on that championship, like to Oscar, and obviously help McLaren continue their like stretch of being in the lead of the team's championship.
Yeah, it was interesting to see, and like going, like you said, into Lando's incident with Oscar. Yeah, really going for a gap there that didn't exist. When I saw him make that move, I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Like, your car is not going to fit through that spot. Plus, there's grass and a wall that you're gonna need to navigate and go onto the grass a bit to even make that possible. And he even said, like, good on Lando as well for just taking it on the chin and being like, it was me. I'm sorry. He apologized immediately, said in the press conference after, like, I misjudged the gap, and it was all him. So I appreciate that he acknowledged immediately and didn't try to like play it off like we see a lot of these drivers do. Obviously, they're in the moment, so sometimes they're not thinking as clearly, and obviously they can only see what they can see sitting in that car. But yeah, it just was a little bit of a shame. Do you think, Daniela, it was a lot of desperation that we were seeing play into a lot of Lando's decisions when it came just to trying to get past Oscar in these last couple laps?
I don't think it is necessarily desperation. I think it's more the fact that everyone's been saying that Lando just needs to go for it. And when he's like challenging Max, he doesn't ever just go for it. Same with Oscar. Like, he always kind of holds himself back. And I think that he had that in the back of his mind of like, I really need to just find a gap and go for it and make a move on Oscar, because otherwise it's never going to happen and I'm just going to be stuck behind him. I think that was what was eating away at him, which is why he went for a gap that really wasn't there. He probably had Ayrton Senna's quote in the back of his mind as well, that if there's a gap and you're a racing driver and you don't go for it, then you're not really a racing driver. And, well, he went for a gap that genuinely wasn't there. And I'm someone who has a Mini, and when I drive my car, I think that my Mini is twice the size that it is. And I'm like, I can't make that gap. And everyone's like, yes, you can. I'm like, no, I can't. I can't fit in that gap. They're like, your car is literally half the size of every other car on the road. You can fit that gap. No, I can't. Lando did the opposite. And he was like, my car is definitely small enough. I can fit that gap. And I think for a second he forgot that he was driving a modern day racing car and modern day F1 car, because those are actually quite wide now, especially those front wings.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it was just an unfortunate accident that I was kind of like, oh no, Lando, I know what you were thinking. I know, but also this was just not the time. But the good news was that Lando was the one to kind of lose the points, because I think it was the other way around. If he had just broken his front wing and it wasn't much of a problem, and he'd given a puncture or like in some way damaged Oscar's car and he was out of the points, this would have started up a massive debate and a massive rivalry between the two that I think McLaren would not have known what to do with. McLaren are classically doing their whole like, we'll just let them race. We're not going to have team orders. We don't have a favourite driver. And they're just, if they keep this up and the drivers are going to keep battling each other, then they might as well say goodbye to the championship now. And I'm not saying they are going to lose the championship, like, if the drivers do clash, because McLaren are so far ahead, but they do need to be careful.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I think I hear you on that, but I think too, like with the drivers, points are so close right now. I think it's a little bit different of a situation than last year, where it was like Lando is clearly your only chance. Like you need to put all your eggs in that basket, where this is like, okay, we are very close together. But like, we at this point, we could put our eggs in both of your baskets. Right now, after that, obviously that incident took off Lando's front wing, saw him DNF from the race. So obviously no points for him, and he received a 5-second penalty from the FIA after the race was over, which was just applied to his race results at the Canadian Grand Prix. So obviously didn't affect him at all because he finished last, or didn't finish at all. But this puts Oscar right now in the driver's standings at obviously comfortably sitting at first with 198 points, with Lando in second with 176 points. So, that did widen the gap there a bit between the two of them. And it is a shame, because if Lando maybe just would have not tried to force it, and let that like desperation and anxiety of like, I just need to get past him, he could have at least brought home points and stayed closer to Oscar now. And now he's going to have to play catch up again at this point. Like we already knew Lando was going to need to continue to outperform Oscar to kind of, get there. But now Lando's really going like every race now moving forward counts. If he wants to be world champion, these types of mistakes can't happen. Like trying to shove your car through a gap that clearly is not going to be a gap that your car is going to fit through. Like even I saw that and I was like, what was he thinking? Because the gap, like there was grass there and then the wall. Like even if you were like, okay, my car can fit through here if my tire goes on the grass, that's incredibly risky, and you're losing your chance. There's a high risk that your car is going to lose control and you won't even be able to make the pass. So I think he just needs to be a little bit more calm and decisive and just waiting for the moment to come to him and not trying to force the moment to happen. I will say though, I did quite enjoy their racing when they both had DRS. That was very exciting, and I was like, screw everyone, get rid of DRS. Like I love that these cars are just going head to head, and they the little swap around the turn, it was so exciting to watch. But unfortunately just not a great result for Lando Norris, and ultimately not what McLaren want when both of their cars are driving in the top. So, but good on Oscar. He kept it on the track after that incident and still came home with P4, which isn't too bad at all, especially when your teammate didn't get anything out of this weekend. Let's move on to Ferrari. To be honest with you, this whole weekend has felt just so kind of weird in a way. Like no one was really like blowing it out of the park besides, I guess we could argue Mercedes was, which we'll get to at the end here, everyone was kind of just bleh. Like, and that's how I honestly felt about this whole weekend. But Ferrari, I think the word bleh is a great descriptor for them this weekend, because it just seemed to be nowhere for both cars. Daniela, what do you think of, again, another kind of like so-so performance from Ferrari? Obviously, both cars brought home points, finished. Lewis finished in P6, Charles in P5. What do you think we can take from this weekend?
Decent points, but it's still just not enough. And I'm kind of fed up with Ferrari at this point. I'm like, come on, just get your act together. I just think that at this point, Charles doesn't really know where he stands with the team. There's been rumours flying around that he's leaving the team. There's like all sorts of things happening. And he never feels like completely sure of what the team want. Like when they say, let's do this strategy, I always kind of feel like he's like, I don't know if that's the right call. But he never says it, where other people will say it. Like I remember Carlos was last year? He was like making a lot of calls because he just knew that the team were not getting it right. And we know that about Ferrari. It's why they're called the clown team. Like they make mistakes, especially when it comes to strategy. But I think that it's really kind of getting to Charles now, and he's kind of like, I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know whether to speak my voice and say this is what we should do, or if I should just do what the team say, because like they know, they have all the data. They're sat on the pit wall and can see what's going on, and they can see more than what Charles can see because he can only see what's directly around him. But at the same point, he's the only one that's driving that car, so he knows what's going on within that car and what could be the right call. But he doesn't know how to kind of say it to the team. So I think that we could have had more from Ferrari this weekend, specifically for Leclerc, if maybe he had kind of called his own shots. And then Lewis just hitting that groundhog on lap 13 kind of just put him out of it a little bit, and he could have, again, probably had a stronger race if he didn't have damage to his car, which ultimately wasn't his fault. And it's unfortunate that, nature kind of came in contact with his car, and I really hope that groundhog is okay. But I kind of imagine if a car is coming at you and you're tiny on the floor and it's a F1 car, you're probably not going to make it out alive. So rest in peace to the groundhog.
Yeah, RIP lap 13 groundhog. Yeah, and if you've never seen a groundhog before, I know that sounds so strange, but I have friends that have not, because they're not in the south of the U.S. They're quite big animals. They're definitely not tiny. They're not like a mouse or a rat. Like, they can be the size of a small dog sometimes. So yeah, that did affect Lewis's downforce really badly, unfortunately. So he's very lucky that he only finished in P6, one place behind where he started this race. So, and he was also having brake issues as well during the race. So it just seemed to not go Ferrari's way this weekend. But I do agree with you, Daniela. And we talked about this in the last episode, I believe, as well. They've got to get this communication thing down. It's absurd to me that this is a known issue with Ferrari. It has been for years, and the problem still has yet to be addressed and yet to be worked on. Also during the race, like Charles, again, like you said, like questioning the strategy, like, why are you doing this? Why are we pitting right now? At one point they had to tell him like, oh, we're on plan C. Charles didn't even know what exact plan they were on at the time, which is just kind of bonkers. To be like, oh yeah, by the way, we're on plan C, we forgot to tell you. It just needs to be better. And also when Lewis was having brake issues, he went on the radio and said, like, I can't stop. Like, the brakes aren't working. I can't stop. And the response from the team was, try to live with it. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I feel like if their communication problems were worked on, or at least changed a bit, we would see some better results and more confident drivers in those cars. And it's just so silly to me that something so simple as communication is what's holding them back, possibly.
You would think that a team who have the most historic background pretty much in motorsport ever, aside from like Alfa Romeo, would be able to communicate clearly and effectively with their drivers. They've had a lot of practice. They've been in the sport since the beginning of time. Why can they not communicate to their drivers what plan they're on, what strategy they're going to do, what tyres they're going to be on? Like, the absolute basics. Why? I just don't understand. It hurts my brain and I physically cannot think about it anymore.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If there's one thing we know about Ferrari is they've always been stubborn. They've always done things their way, even if it seems completely ass backwards or stupid. They don't care. It is their way. It is their tradition, and that's how they do it. And you don't question it. You just don't, which is so much ingrained in their founder, Enzo Ferrari. It's kind of insane. The man was one of the most stubborn humans on the face of the planet. So it doesn't surprise me. But yeah, just not a great weekend for Ferrari again. Another team that didn't have a super great weekend, Williams. Unfortunately, coming off of Spain, which just wasn't great. We were hoping to see a better result for them in Canada. That didn't really happen with Carlos finishing in P10. He was also dealing with power unit issues and issues with the car the whole race that he was trying to manage. Alex's fumble with their team's fumble with his tire strategy, but then he ended up DNFing anyways due to power unit issues. It just wasn't a great weekend for them. Daniela, do you think this is just kind of a bad luck streak for the team? Or do you think we're kind of, that upswing that we're seeing that Williams was having, we're kind of seeing them roll slowly back down the hill?
I'm really hoping it is just a blip. I am a Williams fan, so I am going to be biased here, but I'm struggling. I'm like, no, come on. We were doing so well. Like, what's going on? It was hard to watch as a Williams fan this weekend. The start with Alex losing like half the body of his car, and I was like, how on earth has this happened? What is going on? This is crazy.
Yeah, I was like, who forgot to batten down the hatches like before he left? Like, it literally looked like they forgot to screw in one whole side of the paneling and then just came right off like a kite.
It was insane. And I knew from that moment onwards it was not going to be a good weekend. And I know that Alex went and got through to Q3 and started P9. That made me a little bit more hopeful, but there was still something in the back of my mind being like, I just don't have a good feeling. And like, Carlos had a poor qualifying because he was impeded by Isaac Hadjar, and then he just wasn't really able to turn that around. And then Alex then had power engine issues and DNF'd, and I just was like, I don't want to think about this weekend anymore. I'm done. Which is kind of why I turned it off and went to sleep, because I just couldn't deal with the stress that was created by Williams. I needed to put it out of my mind and I needed some rest.
Yeah, just, you said it, just not another great weekend for them, and I hope, I'm on board with you as well. I hope it's just a blip. I hope it's just some strange problems that are just all happening at once, and hopefully they'll get it out of their system. And for the next race, we'll see some better results for them, because we know they can. We know they can. They've proved they can. And I think maybe that's why it's even a little bit more painful now, is we know the results that they can get in that car. And so when we see these things happen and these lower placements and bad results, it's kind of like, it's even more painful because you know they can make it. But yeah, not a great weekend for Williams. Aston Martin, on the other hand, had a mixed weekend. I just wanted to bring this up. Obviously, Fernando Alonso just looked quick this weekend, and he did prove that, finishing in P7, which is his best finish so far the entire year. Lance Stroll was a bust. He finished in P17. No one seemed to care. At his own home race, no one really seemed to talk about him, which was even funnier. He didn't want to talk about him, and neither did anybody else at his own home race. But yeah, I mean, Alonso, he even spoke very positively about the performance after the race as well. Daniela, I know last week you said you're not remaining optimistic for Fernando Alonso, but do you think this is a positive And also maybe a good positive coming at a right time because there have been lots of rumors about him possibly joining Alpine, which could be crazy, but also not too shocking because his bestest buddy is over and the head of Alpine right now.
So, Fernando Alonso very clearly heard what I said in last week's episode, and he thought, wow, my biggest supporter is not remaining optimistic for me. This needs to change, and I'm going to prove her wrong. And that's exactly what he did. And now I will put my hands up and say, yes, I do feel a little bit awful about what I said in the last episode. Fernando, I'm sorry that I doubted you. But at that point, you hadn't got any points, and it was like 8 races in. What did you expect from me? Okay? The only way you can make up to me is by getting a win, because I wanted that in 2023 and you didn't give it to me, so you better win a race this year. Is that going to happen? Probably not. So, Alonso, if you can't make that happen, then you need to score points in every race for the rest of the season. Thank you.
Yes, totally. He heard you and he said, no, she can't be doubting me now. I'm just going to put in another great race. I mean, yeah, it was a good race from him. I was happy to see it because obviously we've seen them struggling and him in particular struggling for a while. And I remember watching qualifying and I was like, whoa, look at Fernando Alonso go. Like, he's putting in some really great times. And especially on a weekend where we did hear all those rumors about him joining Alpine. Apparently he was seen visiting the Alpine hospitality area 3 times over the entire weekend. Why he would need to go into there 3 times, besides talking about some serious stuff to his buddy Flavio, I have no idea. Those two are 2 people I would never want to put together in a team ever again. But that's for another episode and another time. But yeah, honestly, happy for Fernando and good results, and hopefully Aston Martin can start putting in some points, at least with Fernando Alonso. Last but not least, let's talk about Mercedes. They seem to be the only ones having a positive weekend. They looked quite fast, obviously, with George Russell winning the Canadian Grand Prix. It's his first race of this season. First race win of the entire season for 2025 for him so far, and makes him the 4th different winner in the 2025 season as well. We also saw Kimi Antonelli getting his first ever podium, which was amazing and so cool to watch. He also joins the likes of Max Verstappen, and yes, this is correct, Lance Stroll as the 3rd person. He now joins them as the 3rd driver to ever be on a podium who's under 20 years old. So he joins those ranks. Daniela, do you think Mercedes have kind of figured out what's going on with that car and we're starting to see some of those results pay off now?
It's hard to say, as they've only had like a couple of races where they've really excelled, but I do think things are looking up. I personally was very impressed with Kimi's performance this weekend. The fact that he not only was able to kind of get ahead of Oscar at the start, but maintain that, because I kind of thought, I thought Oscar and others were going to overtake Kimi later on in the race, but that did not happen. He kept his ground and was then gaining on Max and George and maintained that throughout the whole race, which to me was like so surprising. I thought it was a brilliant performance from him. If I had to choose like a driver of the day for me, that would have been Kimi. Very impressed with him. And then, yeah, George had a pretty smooth race, to be honest. I said after qualifying to my friend, oh, I think this could be interesting tomorrow because you've got Max and George starting on the front row. But nothing happened, so I kind of was a bit like, oh, I was hoping for a little bit of spice and drama after Spain, but I was not given that. But it was good that Mercedes won and that George won. I think they needed something like this to kind of pick up the spirits a little bit. And hopefully we can see more appearances of them on the podium. It was nice that they got a double podium.
Yeah, it was. And it was great to see Kimi. I mean, you're right. His performance, I think, kind of went under the radar a bit. But just, wow, just great performance. I know he was actually voted driver of the day, which I think is well earned. I am kind of convinced now that it is a high possibility we could see a Kimi Antonelli win before the end of the season. I think especially after this podium, it'll give him that boost of confidence. He got a little taste of what it's like to be up there and handed a trophy, so that's just going to fuel the hunger for what he wants to do. And I mean, well on him. I think him and Isaac Hadjar, in my eyes, are the two rookies this season that have just been delivering time and time again. And I think it's fantastic and just great positive. And again, like a little bit of a fun history that we get to witness watching him on the podium. And yeah, George, again, I think he's done well this year. Frankly, putting that Mercedes in some races where it shouldn't be at all. But I hopefully now with this boost of confidence, this double podium for Mercedes, this will give them just a little boost that they need to continue this upward momentum for the rest of the season. Now, I mentioned in the beginning of this episode that I felt like after the race it was more exciting, and maybe if you missed it, maybe if you were asleep like Daniela, which I wouldn't blame you, but two things went on after the race. Well, technically three if you count Lando Norris's 5-second penalty that didn't make any difference. We did hear that 7 drivers were noted for safety car infringements after the race. This also included in this list of drivers, Kimi Antonelli. So everyone was a little concerned, thinking, oh dear, 7 drivers, this could be crazy if they decide to take action and give out some penalties. Well, have no worries, they didn't. Everyone just got a little slap on the wrist and a warning of don't do that again. Really, so nothing came of that, but it could have been wild. Daniela, can you imagine, like, if 7 drivers got penalties after the race was over? That would just be pure chaos.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't know if this would be right. If those 7 drivers got penalised, would Hulkenberg been on the podium?
I don't know. I guess it would all depend on the penalties and who got what. I don't know if all of the drivers committed the same infringement or if it was several different ones. I'm not 100% sure because I didn't get a chance to dig into this that much. But that would be pretty crazy if that all
As a
happened.
driver who has never had a podium in his whole F1 career, that would be pretty insane. Imagine, like, if I was Hulkenberg, I'd be like, right, you all come back and we're redoing this podium again because I'm not having my first podium that I've waited what feels like decades for.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be on that podium spraying champagne, so we're going to do it all over again.
He'd be like, everybody come back. Yeah. Even though it's 9 p.m. at night, I don't care. Yeah, it would have been quite crazy. And I remember I'm in a group chat with a bunch of girls in Boston who watch F1, and a lot of them were there. And I remember I saw a lot of them messaging like, oh my gosh, 7 drivers, like this could be insane. But nothing came of that. It was just a warning from the FIA. Another thing that we'll end on that happened after the race here, Red Bull decided to launch a protest against car 63, George Russell. If you missed it, but during the safety car, George Russell slammed on his brakes for an unknown reason, but he did slam on his brakes, and Max Verstappen claimed he had to swerve out of the way so he didn't hit him. And by swerving out of the way, he technically passed George Russell in doing that. Max noted this immediately over the radio, saying, I had to get out of the way. I was going to hit him. Like, I wasn't doing this on purpose, which I think was smart of him to do, because obviously a lot of eyes are on him and George at the moment. But that happened, and it was kind of noted, people saw it happen. And but then after the race, Red Bull launched this protest saying that George Russell was driving erratically. And here's the kicker. Are you ready? They also said that he was exhibiting unsportsmanlike intent. Basically saying he slammed on the brakes intentionally so Max would run into the back of him. Which I'm like, Red Bull. Red Bull. Like, out of all the people that should be claiming unsportsmanlike intent, it shouldn't be you right now, because last weekend was the perfect example that your driver gave us of an unsportsmanlike intent. It's actually next to the dictionary. in the dictionary of unsportsmanlike dent Max Verstappen's face. Daniela, what do you take from this? Do you think this is just a little Red Bull and Mercedes just kind of poking back at each other, trying to just frazzle some feathers?
I'm not going to lie. I rolled my eyes when I found out about this, because Red Bull claiming unsportsmanlike behaviour and driving is actually hilarious at this point. I won't go into a massive rant like I did in the last episode about the whole Max versus George incident that happened, but Red Bull, that was very bold of you. I see what you're doing. You're trying to create a little bit of drama. Okay, I see it, but how ridiculous! Like, I'm sorry. At least George did not purposefully turn in to Max Verstappen. Okay, so yeah, Red Bull. Am I surprised you said this? No, I'm just a little bit disappointed.
It kind of just brings to my mind when you see two younger kids, like something happens and the parent doesn't see it, but they turn around and they're like, what happened? And you see both kids go, they did it, like pointing at the... This felt so much like Red Bull being like, they did it. Like, they kind of like, fine, you're going to penalize us. Now, if he does this, then he needs to get a penalty too. Like, it just was so ridiculous. And part of me is like, I understand you got to do and take the shots you've got to take to gain an advantage in this sport. And we know sometimes teams just do certain things knowing that, like, oh, this will piss them off. This will get in their head. We are fully aware of that. But when I saw that in the complaint, I was like, too soon, Red Bull, too soon. Like, this is not the time. I'm sure their whole PR team saw this come out and they were like, oh, God. Like, why did you do it? Like, this makes us look so even worse, like, than we did. But it doesn't surprise me that they lodged a complaint, because this is Christian Horner. He's going to do everything he can to poke and prod at Toto Wolff and that team. But yeah, just what a cherry on top of a weekend. You know, at least that part of it made us laugh. Like, at least there was something interesting happening after the race. But needless to say, the FIA also found it just as laughable as we did, and they rejected what a protest from Red Bull hours after it was submitted. So basically there was drama at the end of the race, but nothing came from any of the possible drama. I should say there wasn't really drama. There was a possibility of drama, and then it all just went away. So pretty boring race. We'd love to hear from you and how your experiences was at the race. But make sure always to like, comment, and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. As always, we're all on social media, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at the Fastlane Collective _. And until next episode, we will see you guys in the Fastlane. Bye-bye.
Hello, fly chick coming through. Nice to meet you. Glad you came too.